fuck going on, waiters?
Lizzie K, yeah, that shit gon' fall. Rather die than my bitch till it's
Right?
Hello everyone, welcome to Cupcake Media, and today we have the wonderful Liz K from Hello Cat Therapy joining us today because we don't know what happened to Techie. He just completely went MIA, but due to popular demand, we have brought Lizzie K on board with us to help answer and talk about some of our issues. So today, we are going to discuss something very fun, something that, you know, a lot of people that we know are kind of dealing with, and it involves dating. It involves moving on, the dating phase, and having a serious relationship, and kind of the issues we deal with living in America, especially if you're a young gal who wants to eventually get married and have kids. So, I think one of the questions we're always asked is, for example, what are some things that, let's say, you as a woman would look for in a serious potential partner, someone that you want to have a long-term relationship or get married with? What are some things that you look for that you could help our audience out there with?
Well, I mean, it sounds very cliche, but I would probably say stability, I think, is something that a lot of, that I myself personally can say that I, really did look for. I think that somebody who's stable, not only, stable in terms of like their, their like home life, their living situation, even their financial situation, stuff like that. I mean, they don't need to be like, rolling in dough, but they need to at least kind of have their life under control, right? But also you kind of look for like mental stability too. Like, how do they deal with stress? How do they deal with difficult situations? And I think that kind of stuff takes a little bit of time to, you kind of can't figure that out on a first date type of situation.
True, definitely not on the first date. Sometimes there are red flags out there that you see, immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you're like 25 years old, living in America, specifically like in California, having financial stability is going to be a little hard. But, if they have a good career and they've just begun it, you can kind of envision where this will be in 10 years and in 15 years and 20 years, and even in the intermediate of the 5 years. I think one thing that mainly for our female audience to take into account is living in the States, there's this misconception that you can have it all, and I think that's a wrong idea. That's a wrong mentality, because when you look at the data, whether it's Jordan Peterson talking about certain things that have come out lately, to the University of Chicago showing, for example, stay-at-home moms are much happier than women who work. When we look at the data, I think the problem is that, you're told you can be this boss lady, this corporate mom, you could be an amazing wife and an amazing mentor to your kids, but that's just all kind of bullshit, because you can't do all things simultaneously at once. And if you try to do that, and for those of you who don't know, Liz is a mental health professional, so she deals with this stuff a lot more than I do on a professional side. Something's going to falter. Like, it's either your marriage is going to falter, or your relationship with your kids is going to falter. Or if you go the other way, which very few people do, is your job will falter, but at least your home life will prosper. And I think the other issue is people tell, and we hear this with a lot of our friends that we've known for over a decade, is, oh, you're still young, like, you can, don't worry about it, you're still young, you have time. But the dilemma is, what is your view on time? If you want to get married and have kids, you really have a prime window. And as a man, I want women to understand this, which is you have a prime window to have the best option in selecting the best partner, or the best husband in this case, or even the best wife in this case, if you don't like to go out with men, for example. Because you have a prime window in really attracting better potential people to go out with. And once that window goes out, it becomes a lot harder for most women to date. For example, if you're a 40-year-old man, I hate to say it, it's still easier for a 40-year-old successful man to date someone who might be 35 or 30 versus a 40-year-old woman whose pool is no longer in that pool per se. They are going to be relegated to people under 45, like 40 and above, between 40 and 50, maybe 60. And if you're really trying to have kids, the dilemma is, regardless of what your doctors tell you, you might be 34, 35, 36. They'll tell you your eggs look great, but the reality is the science shows that after 35, everything becomes high risk, and your ability to have, let's say, your ability to have a healthy pregnancy without complications, that just...
Well, the risk is increased.
Yeah, the risk increases a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I think one thing for our female audience to take into account is take your dating more serious once you start hitting 25, like between 25 and 27. You want to start viewing people that at that age you have the ability to invest in someone and you have some time to spare. So if you're 25, if you're somebody for at least 2-3 years and it's not going to go anywhere, I think it's time for you to cut your losses and move on. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be too judgy from, out from the gate either, right? You don't want to be like, after one day, this person, I don't like the way they laugh, so I'm not gonna give it a go. Like, we're not saying that you have to be choosy in that sense.
Correct.
But absolutely, you should have a list of things that you are maybe looking for in a person, and you shouldn't really waste your time with somebody who really doesn't meet those standards that you have for yourself. And I think that there's nothing wrong with putting in some time, but really knowing when enough is enough. And it's kind of like, I don't want to waste your time, I don't want to waste mine. Let's just go our separate ways and just continue looking for, if that's what you want. If you're looking for marriage, children, the whole nine type of thing.
Yeah, and I think for the young men out there, if you're in your mid-20s, let's say you're 25 as well, and you're dating a girl who's 25, and we've seen this happen a lot, and if by the time you're like, if you've been with them for 2-3 years and you cannot see a future with them, have the balls to just break it up. They will, your girlfriend will appreciate you later on in life for not wasting her time, because we've seen the opposite effect where we've known people who are 22, 23, 24, and they've gone out for 10 years. So now they're in their 30s, okay? They're like 34. And that is the shittiest time to ever break up, because you've given up a prime decade of being able to find the best mate possible, the best partner possible. And unfortunately, the girls really get the short end of that stick, because now they're 34. If they're trying to have kids and let's say they have not frozen their eggs and done things like that, they feel an immense pressure. And at that point, it really sucks for them, because you might make a hasty decision in going out with a person that you do not like and you don't feel any type of emotional attraction to, any type of physical attraction to, and you just jump in it for the sake of it to like have a family per se, or to settle down and get married. And that's not going to lead you to a life of happiness. I mean, it may, but it's also going to have a lot of, I think, difficulties. And the other dilemma to that is your maturity in terms of dating is that of one in the 20s. So you have not really matured in the sense of at least being able to go out with other people and evolve and grow as a person. You're still like a young 22-year-old with a mindset of a 22-year-old who just became single at the age of 34 or 35. So do them a favor. Like, if you're a 25-year-old man and you're going out with a gal for 2 years, 3 years max, and you don't see a future with them, don't waste your time. Like, honestly, you want to break up with them, because we've seen a lot of bad breakups where people have been going out in their 20s for over 10 years, and now, like I said, they're 33, 34, 35, they break up, and the girl gets a short end of the stick, and now her dating pool is really shitty, because if you want to go out with like an alpha male, like you want to go out with the man that will take care of you, take care of your future family, is educated, has a stable job, has a good career, has ambitions, likes to work out, for example, it's going to be much harder finding that as a young woman at the age of 34, because all those men that you're seeking are going to be your age to about 40 max. But they're not going to be really taking you too serious, because if they have everything that they have going on in life, they're probably going to start looking at people who are a little bit younger than you, even if they're 32 or 30. And we've seen it happen all the time. We're not trying to be dicks about it. This is just the harsh reality of life. Now, if you don't want to have kids, this is good. That's going to be the second part of this topic. That's a different ballgame. But for people we know, and a lot of just young couples we know, this has been kind of the hard issue of they went out for 10 years or 8 years. They're in their 30s. They're trying to have kids, and they didn't take some of the precautions necessary to kind of think forward for the future. I think, and I'm going to let you jump in a sec, Liz, would you advise, let's say you're a 25-year-old woman right now, you're a young woman, you're about to start your career, would you advise, like, hey, go and at least freeze your eggs right now if you can?
At 25?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like 25 is pretty young, to be honest. I mean, 25, you still have a good amount of years. And also, to be honest, there may not be a lot of 25-year-olds out there that can make that type of financial commitment either. Because, freezing your eggs, in case, you're not aware, it's essentially like doing the first part of IVF. So there's a big financial commitment there, because I think that's probably the number one thing that comes out. And there's also a physical commitment, because I mean we're talking like multiple doctor's visits, sometimes in a week you're going in for blood work and all this stuff. So there's a big commitment there. So I think at 25, if you can, that's fantastic. I think freezing them earlier rather than later is always ideal. I think any fertility specialist will let you know that as women get older, the quality of the eggs, and I hate to say it that way, but that's just kind of how they actually say it, it starts to degrade as women get older. And so, but yeah, I mean, if you can do it at 25, more power to you. I think that's great. But I think that if you can do it, if you are, let's say, not in a relationship, or in a relationship that's maybe questionable and you're not really sure if it's going to go anywhere, but you know that you don't even have to know definitely that you want to have children, but that you want to have, you want to have that option. You want to have that as like an added assurance for yourself. I think there's nothing wrong with doing that, and I think that I would strongly encourage it, definitely, because why not? Why not have a very good chance, give yourself the best chance to have children in the future, because you never know what'll happen in the future, right?
Yeah. I think definitely by the time you're 30, even if you're not 100% set on having kids, you're like, you know what, I'm 50-50, I haven't found the right man yet. I would say anything below 35, go ahead and do it. Mm-hmm. And we come from an experience where, we unfortunately had 2 miscarriages, and it had nothing to do with bad health, it was just bad roll of the dice. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things where our doctor said, look, they're like, this is literally going into our textbook. You're this old, and these are the chances of this happening back to back. Mm-hmm. And in hindsight, we're like, for us, it's like, fuck, like if we had better known this, we would have planned it, in our 30s to just have that safety deposit box of having, let's say, better eggs or better embryos if you're in a relationship. Mm-hmm. And not deal with some of the heartaches and heartbreaks that come with it, unfortunately. But as a woman, if you're 35, if you're 36 or below, but definitely 35 or below, like even if you're 34, don't worry about getting the next Chanel or Louis Vuitton bag. Like if you're 50-50 on having kids, just go and get it done. You'll thank us later. You'll also be a lot more happier, and your doctors will also actually be very proud of you for taking those courageous steps in thinking about your future. Yeah. In terms of dating, I think, we have a lot of friends in our 30s, and our dynamics in America and North America have really changed, unfortunately. And I think it's leading to a lot of heartbreak and a lot of just people self-doubting as to what they should be doing in life. And I think I'm going to give it from a man's perspective as to how a woman should think when they are 30 years old, how they should view people they date. So if you're a woman who is exactly 30 years old, you really like, and let's say you want to have kids, you really, the way you want to view it is you have like 5 important years to make some really important decisions in terms of marriage and kids. And this is saying, even if you have frozen your eggs, and if you've not frozen your eggs, that you just want to go with this mentality. You don't want to waste a year with a guy who's not on your same trajectory. It doesn't mean like on your first date you go, hey, I want to get married in 2 weeks, but you should, as a mature young woman, as a mature adult, at least within 90 days, you should have a feeling of, okay, like, am I going to be able to put in another 3 months into this relationship? And by month 6, month 8, like max month 8, I think you two should have important discussions of where the future is going, because you don't want to waste 2 years and then break up. Like, you really want to value your time here. This is an asset that you will not get back. It's time is the only resource that all of us share that it diminishes every day. Like, we can replenish the food in our fridge, but we cannot replenish our time. So really take it serious, and I'm saying this from a man's perspective as well, for all of you to really take advantage of it. So if you're 30 years old, you're single, don't just go out with the guy for the sake of going out with the guy. Like, everyone you meet should be someone that you innately feel is someone that you're like, I can build a future with this person with. It doesn't mean they click all the boxes. That comes through time. But you're going to have certain feelings. You're going to have to really tap into your intuition, which is something we really lack out here, and see how you feel. Because you don't want to be that person dating someone until you're 40 and then you break up. Now you're fucked. You know, especially if you haven't frozen your eggs, you know, especially if, you know, like you're also trying to have kids. Like, now you're 40. Now you are very high risk if you want to have kids. And also your dating pool is not going to be people in their 30s anymore. It's going to be between the ages of 40 to 50. And that genre of people is going to be very different from the genre of people in your 30s. And if you're 31, 32, 33, same criteria. Like, the higher you are in your 30s, the more serious you have to be about your dating, and not let people just view someone that they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to go and just have a good time with this person, just have sex with them, and that's it. Like, no, like, you control the cards. Don't ever forget that. You control the cards, make them earn it. And I think as you get closer to 35, like if you're like 33, 34, and you've been going out for 2 years, and you can't even imagine a future with them, then what are you doing in a relationship? Like, you have to cut it and move on, because you're not doing yourself any good, and you're not doing your you know, partner on the other end any good as well. What do you think, Liz?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely true. I think that, you know, it's like, don't waste your time. Honestly, you know, just don't waste your time. And especially if that person, if your partner can't give you an answer after, like, if you guys are in your mid-30s and the guy or girl can't give you an answer as to where the relationship is going at that point, and you have been very clear that your plan is to have children, and if they still can't give you that answer, then just cut them loose. Honestly, you know, and find somebody who does understand and who will be able to give you the things that you're looking for in a relationship.
Would you say 6 months is a good cutoff time?
It
like
depends.
if you're like 33 or 34, like, you think that's a good cutoff time?
I mean, I think it depends. It definitely can be. I think it depends on the relationship itself, on how it starts. I think if the intention is set early on, like, let's say, for example, you guys are both on a dating app, and you guys kind of do the chat before you meet up, and you know how they talk about, well, what are you looking for? Well, I'm looking for this. And both people are looking for a long-term relationship type of thing. Then I think 6 months is probably reasonable. But yeah, you meet a guy, like, you know, on the street that you don't even, complete stranger, that might take just a little bit more time, maybe up to a year or so, to really get an idea of, like, is this going to be a permanent thing? Yeah. Again, it all depends on the person, and especially the age of, in this case, we're talking about for women, especially that want children, depends on what age you're at too, and whether or not you've kind of taken that initiative to freeze your eggs or not. And at the same time, it's also really important to remember that just because you freeze your eggs is not a guarantee either that you're going to have children. So you absolutely want to still keep in mind your age and your health and all of that stuff too.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the hard thing is because we're kind of living in America and for North America, there's this, we see it time and time again. There's this false belief that it's like you could be 45 years old and having a kid. We're not saying it can't happen, but a lot of those people also, like, because we see it with celebrities, for example, right? A lot of that's just bullshit. They're not having kids. Most of them are doing surrogates, for example. You know, and they froze their eggs when they're like 29. And they live a completely different life than the normal person.
Yeah.
You know, I think the dilemma is they don't realize that this ideology creates a lot more harm than any good, because it makes a lot of, especially women, it makes them a lot, so much more depressed and anxious as they get into their 30s, because, you know, if like you come from an Asian background, there's an expectation, like you should have got married at 24. That's the reality, right? But times have changed. A lot of people are going to school, they're getting master's degrees, so they're probably, not going to technically have like all the free time in the world to be able to go and get married like at 25. They're probably going to do it at 30 or 32. And the dilemma is, we can't have it all, right? In anything you do in life, there's going to be sacrifice. It's like, the analogous, lame, funny analogies we use is like, you can't eat ice cream every day and chips and then try to work out and expect to have like a six-pack all year round. You're going to have to sacrifice something to enjoy something. So if you want to be, instead of a six-pack, you want a 6-liter, okay, eat your ice cream and chips. But if you want that six-pack and look lean and look buff and fit, you're going to have to sacrifice all the crap food, And I think there should be a little bit more emphasis on time and appreciating your time, and also not worrying about like, I need to be a boss lady and do all this. I think there's not a lot of credit given to just being an amazing, wife and being an amazing mom. I think that unfortunately in our culture gets shamed so much. And what's interesting is with all the studies coming out in the last few years, for example, housewives are shown to be much happier than single women who work and women who and wives who have kids and work as well. Like they have a new sense of identity and purpose. And I think it's sad when you have other women bashing housewives going, oh, like your job is so easy because you just stay at home. It's like, well, I don't know if any of you have, but I mean, we've dealt with my niece and my nephew. Like dealing with a 1-year-old is like 10 jobs. It's nonstop. It's 24 hours, And to raise good kids, like they don't need to be the next Elon Musk, or Jeff Bezos, but just to raise a good human being, that doesn't get enough credit in our society. Just look at all the assholes that we deal with in American culture, especially in a place like California. Just look at all the robberies happening right now. These things, they unfortunately happen young. It happens with bad parenting and a lack of good parenting.
Well, I think it's also important that we're saying that it's really important to not shame, or there's nothing wrong. There's no shame in it. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a homemaker, to be a housewife, to be a full-time mom. We're saying if that's available to you, right? Because it's not available to everybody. There are women who have to work. Like there's dual income households that they just can't do it if there's only one person working. So we're not saying, oh, every woman has to become a homemaker and that they have to be home with the kids and all that stuff. What we're saying is that we're just trying to have this conversation about taking the stigma out of, hey, like it's okay if that's what you want. Like if that's your goal in life, like more power to you. Like at least you know what you want to do, and you know what you want to do, and you know that you want to be there for your kids, or like you want to be there for your husband, and yeah, if you can make it happen, we're saying there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think that society, like Shadad was saying, it's just, they really just stigmatize it and make it seem like it's such a horrible thing to want to do, because they've really put so much emphasis on independence, and it's almost like if you're not working as a woman, that means you're not an independent person. And I think you can still be independent, you can still be empowered, but perhaps you want to be home with your family. So it's kind of like, it's really about like just not bashing it. It's a goal that someone has, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Absolutely. And also it's, we're not saying you have to be a housewife forever. It's if you can do it for a couple of years, do it. I mean, the reality is, I view it from a business side, and numbers is my game. And people can make the sacrifice if they choose to, if they don't just want to constantly buy a lot of stupid shit. It's very possible. I've had friends come to me, show me all their finances, and like they have saved thousands of dollars a month by getting rid of stupid, like non-essential, like streaming services, and just constantly going out to eat. Like, I'm not saying you don't have to go out to eat, but the difference is if you're doing it every single weekend and you're trying to go to mass shows like 3 times a week. I mean, dude, Bill Gates isn't going to mass shows even 3 times a week. You can make it work. Like, if you have a great career and you want to be an awesome mom, Liz can maybe chime in on this more just on a developmental side, but if you can spend, I would say, the first 2 to 4 years until the kid goes to physical school, I think that's wonderful. And then if you want to go back to your career, that's great, because guess what? The kid is on a schedule. Let's say they're 4 years old, they're going to pre-K. Well, guess what? You're dropping off your kid, you get to go back to your company or whatever you do as work, and you and your husband get to work out the finer details as to who picks up the kid, et cetera, et cetera. So those options are there as well. Regardless, I think just being good parenting is the thing that's really lacking. Our generation somehow thinks like when they have kids, they can just outsource it to somebody in India, like they do with everything else that we do in our society. We just outsource our work. And this is one of those things where you cannot outsource it. If you outsource it, you see the results on TV every single day in the United States. Kids doing terrible things, or they become young adults and they do terrible things. I mean, what do you think? Like, what's your take maybe on the developmental side of kids being with their parents for those like first couple years? Because some studies have shown that kids who have, let's say, a mom with them more are actually, especially if they have a full-time mom, they're less anxious, they're more open to their parents, they don't have so many insecurity issues, they're a lot more confident, for example, as they go through the schooling ages from pre-K all the way through, up to high school. What's your take on it, since this is something, you've had to study and it's your profession? Like, what would be your recommendation and just your thoughts on it?
I mean, honestly, the thought that really comes to my mind when I think about that question really is how important it is for the parent to be prepared for their kid too, though. Like, they need to educate themselves before they have their kid on how they're going to raise their kid and what type of disciplinary actions they're planning to do, what type of way are they planning to even speak to their child. What kind of things do they want to teach them when they're very early on, between the ages of 0 to 2. I feel like at the end of the day, the responsibility falls on the parents.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's what you're saying, that's what I'm saying, I think that's what maybe a lot of people would agree with. And the responsibility is that you want to be a good parent, and you want to educate yourself, you want to know what tools you need, and you want to teach those to your kids. And your kid, chances are, will turn out just fine if you do those things, if you put in the effort as a parent to do that. I think that just by being home and with your kid there, but if you don't interact with the kid, if you just turn the television on and let them watch TV all day long and totally neglect all of your parental duties, it's like, yeah, there's no point in having a parent stay at home at that point.
Yeah.
You might as well have them go to daycare and at least have some stimulation, right, and be around their peers. But we're talking like if a parent is home and they're actively involved in their child's life, plays with them, teaches them things, just spends quality time. So absolutely, if the parent is there and they are willing to put in the work, of course I would probably agree that would be the best case scenario for a child, especially in their very early years. Once they go to school, they go to school. You're not there anyway. But we're talking like very early on,
Yeah.
first few years of their life. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, I think it's important to stress that it goes back to thinking you can outsource your kids. Like YouTube is not something you want your kids to watch from the ages of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like you want to be present in your kid's life. Like if you look at the way Europeans, our neighbors down south and in South America and Central America, Asia, Africa, parenting is a lot more involved. They have a little bit more of that animalistic instinct. Like if you see animals have, say dogs have puppies, right? They're there present, getting them ready to survive. And we're always taking a back seat. And if you want to take a back seat, maybe you got to ask yourself, do I want to have kids? Because this isn't something that you can just give off to a nanny. I hate to say it, you just cannot do that, And when it comes back, when we come back full circle to the dating aspect, I think women really have to. If I was a woman right now who's at least minimum 25, max 27, and I do want to settle down, and I do want to have kids, I would really when you're 25, you can put in 3 years into a relationship. When you're 27, you can still put in 3 years into a relationship. I would just view my time as very precious. If I'm 27 and I'm, let's say, 28, and I'm going out with somebody and they still don't know what the hell they want to do with me, other than the fact that they think I'm this awesome hot girl, I would just cut it. I would cut it just from the cultural mindset that we have, where we come from, where we tell our women to be very vivacious warriors, Like, oh, they don't want to take you serious at 28, they'll never take you serious at 29 or 30, And if you're in your 30s, really view your time as even more precious. Like this is something like finding I don't know, like a rare pink diamond that only comes once in a lifetime, right? Don't just go out with people for the sake of going out with them. Don't be in a relationship for more than a year because you're afraid to be alone. Honestly, being alone is wonderful because you get to know more about yourself, and when you're happy by yourself, you can then learn to be happy with others. But don't, if you're 30 or 31, don't make the mistake that we've seen where people go out for 5, 6 years and then the guy leaves them, which is freaking heartbreak, and it ruins a lot of their plans in life. And one thing, I think a lot of us, we hear a lot of women who are 38 go, oh, there's no fucking good men left in the world. If you're at that age and that is your excuse, I hate to say it, but you got to take a deep look at yourself and realize that maybe also the problem is you, because it takes 2 people to tango. And if that is your common excuse for not meeting good people, I think even regardless of any age, you got to then really take a step back and try to figure out, what am I doing wrong? What is it about me that is making people not want to say it? Is it my temper? Is it my lack of, just care and apathy? Because we hear that a lot. And even from men who are oh, there's no good girls. Well, dude, if you're 40 and there's no good women out there, you have to at least say 20% of the problem is still your fault. You can't blame it all on society. There's about 7+ billion people on this planet, so the odds of finding somebody are actually in your favor. And I think also people, especially for young gals in their 30s, one thing I think they should deviate from is finding the ideal type. As a married couple, will tell you the ideal type doesn't exist. Like if I were to show you what my ideal type was, sorry, hon, don't get mad. It wouldn't really match what Liz is in person. Like on paper and who I met are completely different. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, when we say, you should have a standard and you should have the things that you look for in a person, we're not saying that you need to find your perfect person. Relationships grow, people change together, they grow together. But having somebody who has the same type of ambitions and has a plan and who has the same values and who has things similar to you that they want in life too. Yeah. I think when you share those things, amazing things can happen within that relationship. But absolutely, I mean, I think a lot of the time, if you narrow mind yourself into just one type of person that you're looking for, you're always going to end up alone, unfortunately, or you won't end up with the right people. You really got to kind of open up open up your mind a little bit more.
Yeah.
And really see potential in relationships opposed to just, it's not all here right now. I can't, I'm not going to go for this.
Yeah.
So.
And if you want to kind of quick start your relationship to see how both you and your future, long-term partner are, let's say you're 32 and you want to test your relationship, you can do it in a fun way. You guys should go on vacation somewhere where they don't speak English. Let's say you're, I don't know. Let's say you're both Japanese, right? Then go somewhere where they don't speak Japanese, right? And put yourself kind of in a little bit of a high stress environment because you don't know the common language, and just deal with it and see how you guys deal with getting lost in a foreign country and in a foreign city, ordering food that you have no idea what it is, because that can really bring out the best in people, or it really, exemplifies their worst traits. Like, if they're a really just an asshole type of person and they can't deal with certain changes and difficulties, then you're going to see their frustration and anger. Now, if they're taking it out on you, then you can kind of get an idea that, okay, what's going to happen if we're married and I don't know, the house burned down? Am I going to get yelled at, right? Or we have kids and the kid's not doing good in school. Whose fault is that? It's technically both your faults, right? But see how they are. Now if they're having a blast with getting lost and they thought they ordered, I don't know, a hamburger, but they got pig's feet instead, and they're just having a great time, then the two of you will be able to at least see, wow, even through some of the most difficult situations right now, we're able to at least still have a good time. And our mindset comes from a marriage perspective, which is, not every day is happy days, like Instagram would say. You're going to have difficult times, but it's a matter of how you react to those difficult times and how you can still make the best of any shitty situation. And sometimes you deal with a lot of just very, very heartbreaking moments, such as, having miscarriages. And one person will be in a better mental state than the other, and you need to help your friend out, right? In that case, in just moving forward and still trying to bring some light and joy into the relationship. So if you want to give a little litmus test, literally go on vacation, maybe just throw a dart onto a map, and wherever it lands, go there, deal with it, and see how you two interact.
And it'd be very interesting. You'd be very surprised what you would learn from an experience like that, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, I just want to say thanks so much for having me on your show. This is so exciting, and I hope that you'll ask me to come back, because this was fantastic. I had a great time.
Tell people your Instagram.
My Instagram is Liz Kalashati.
We'll write it in.
We'll definitely write it in the description. It's still a bit under construction, but there will be some activity on there very soon.
And your therapy company is Hello Cat Therapy?
Hello Cat, and it's Hello, and Cat stands for coaching and therapy. And yeah, it's my little baby.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode. Please remember to just click subscribe. You can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasting streaming services. And if you like Liz, let us know, and we'll bring her back for you guys, okay? Thank you very much, and have a great day, everyone.